What if I told you that one unannounced prison visit by a president completely transformed an entire nation's justice system? What if I told you that a single conversation with a forgotten prisoner sparked the largest justice reform in African history? You're about to hear a story so incredible, so moving, that it'll restore your faith in humanity and show you what real leadership looks like. This isn't just another political story. This is about a man who chose to listen when everyone else had stopped caring. This is about second chances, broken systems, and the power of one voice to change everything. Picture this, it's a bright Monday morning in Ouagadougou, the bustling capital of Burkina Faso. The sun is painting the rooftops gold, and most world leaders are probably sitting in air-conditioned boardrooms, discussing policies that sound good on paper but never reach the people who need them most. But President Ibrahim Traoré? He's doing something completely different. Something that would shock his entire administration and ultimately change thousands of lives forever. He walks up to his driver that morning with a request that makes the man's jaw drop: "Drive me to the central prison. I want to see how people are living in there. And listen carefully, no one must know we're coming." No media circus. No advance warning. No staged photo opportunities. Just a president and his conscience, heading to the one place most politicians avoid like the plague. Can you imagine the confusion at the prison gates? Picture the guards' faces when they see their president standing there like an ordinary visitor. These men are used to routine, to predictability, to knowing exactly what each day will bring. And here's the most powerful man in their country, showing up unannounced, asking to be taken inside. The prison warden, sweating bullets, tries to apologize for not being prepared. But the president cuts him off. "I'm not here for preparation. Take me to the prisoners. I want to speak with them." Now, I need you to understand something about African prisons. They're not just buildings, they're often places where hope goes to die. Overcrowded, underfunded, filled with people who've been forgotten by the world outside. The smell hits you first, a mixture of desperation, unwashed bodies, and dreams that have been locked away for years. As President Traoré walks through the main prison block, something magical happens. Hundreds of inmates stop whatever they're doing. Some are playing cards on the concrete floor. Others are lying down, staring at nothing. A few are praying silently, probably asking God for miracles they've stopped believing in. One by one, they stand up. Not because they have to, but because they can't believe what they're seeing. When was the last time anyone in power had come to see them? When was the last time anyone had cared enough to ask how they were doing? The president doesn't just wave and walk by. He stops. He shakes hands. He looks each man in the eye and asks the questions that matter. How long have you been here? What were you accused of? Do you have family? These aren't rehearsed political questions. These are human questions, asked by a man who genuinely wants to know. For an hour, he moves from cell to cell, listening to stories that would break your heart. But then he notices something that changes everything. In a dark corner of a small cell, there's a man sitting quietly. He's not standing like the others. He's not even looking up. His head is bowed, his face shows the kind of exhaustion that comes from years of abandonment. President Traoré walks closer and stops in front of him. "What is your name?" he asks gently. The man looks up slowly, his eyes filled with pain that words can't describe. "Emmanuel," he whispers. "How long have you been here, Emmanuel?" 7 years, sir." 7 years. Let that sink in for a moment. 7 years of this man's life, gone. 7 years of missed birthdays, missed opportunities, missed chances to hold his children. "What was your crime?" Emmanuel swallows hard, and his answer will haunt you. "They said I stole money from my boss, but I didn't. I worked for him for many years. He accused me because he wanted to get rid of me and hire his nephew. I had no lawyer. No one believed me. I am a poor man." The president looks into Emmanuel's eyes, and something clicks. There's no hatred there, no bitterness. Just quiet pain, the kind that comes from being abandoned and wrongly judged. "Why didn't you appeal?" "I tried," Emmanuel whispers. "But I have no money. My wife left me. My children were taken away. No one has visited me in all these years." The silence that follows is deafening. Even the other prisoners stop talking. Everyone can see that something profound is happening. After what feels like forever, President Traoré speaks 4 words that will echo through history. "I believe you, Emmanuel." The warden gasps. But the president repeats it, louder this time. "I said I believe him." What happens next is why this story matters. The president doesn't just offer empty sympathy. He takes action. He orders Emmanuel's case file to be brought to him before the end of the day. He wants every detail: who arrested him, who judged the case, who was the accuser. Then he looks at Emmanuel again and makes a promise that will change everything. Your story is not over. I give you my word. As he walks out of that prison, every inmate stands in silence. Something has shifted in the air. Hope, which had been buried for so long, begins to stir again. But here's where it gets really good. Instead of going back to his comfortable office, the president cancels all his meetings and heads straight to the Ministry of Justice. When his aide tries to object, he cuts him off. No excuses. A man's life is waiting. Within hours, President Traoré has assembled a task force of honest lawyers and human rights officers. What they discover about Emmanuel's case will make your blood boil. The entire trial was a setup. The judge who convicted him was corrupt and had been taking bribes. Emmanuel's wealthy employer had used his influence to speed up the trial. Emmanuel had no legal representation, and the only evidence against him was a confession he claims he was forced to sign under threat. This is terrible, one of the investigating officers says. The man was framed. The whole trial was a setup. The next morning, President Traoré returns to the prison, but this time he brings cameras and reporters. The entire nation watches as he enters Emmanuel's cell with hope shining in his eyes. Emmanuel, he says warmly, I've read your file. You were not only wrongly accused, you were abandoned by a system that should have protected you. I'm sorry. Emmanuel blinks in confusion. Sir? You're going home today. Gasps echo around the prison. Emmanuel looks around like he's in a dream. Is this real? He asks, tears streaming down his face. Yes, it is, the president says. You are a free man. When Emmanuel steps out of that prison, he's been inside for 7 years. He's thinner, older, carrying nothing but the clothes on his back. But the sun that hits his face that day feels different from the sun that shone when he was first locked away. Reporters rush toward him. How do you feel? What will you do now? Emmanuel looks down at his hands, then up at the sky. I don't know, he says softly. I have no family, no house, no job. But I have hope. That's enough for now. President Traoré places a hand on his shoulder. You're not alone. And he means it. He takes Emmanuel to the presidential guest house, where for the first time in years, Emmanuel bathes with clean water, eats real food, and sleeps on a soft bed. But this is just the beginning. The president invites Emmanuel to the palace the next day. I want to hear everything, he says. Your childhood, your job, your dreams. Emmanuel tells him about growing up in a small village, working hard as a clerk, marrying young, and watching everything crumble when he was arrested. I wanted to be a teacher, he says. But life had other plans. The president nods. Well, life has changed again. And this time, you're in charge. Emmanuel smiles, the first real smile he's had in years. That afternoon, President Traoré calls a press conference that will go down in history. Standing before the cameras with Emmanuel beside him, he says, today we correct a mistake. But this is not just about one man. We must fix a broken system. No citizen should suffer in silence. I will not rest until our justice system protects the innocent and punishes the guilty fairly. He turns to Emmanuel, who's standing there in borrowed clothes, hands shaking. Meet Emmanuel. He is not a criminal. He is a survivor. And he is now part of a new task force to help us investigate other wrongful imprisonments across the country. The crowd erupts in applause. Emmanuel's eyes fill with tears again, but this time they're tears of hope. And just like that, a man forgotten by the world becomes a symbol of justice and change in Burkina Faso. But wait, there's more. The president doesn't stop there. He orders a national audit of every prisoner who has served more than 5 years, especially those without legal support. He creates Operation Justice Light, a campaign to review cases across the entire country. What they find is staggering. In prison after prison, they discover people who've been forgotten by the system. A young man named Thomas who was arrested during a protest at age 17, he's been in prison for 10 years without trial. His parents died while he was in custody. A man named Jacob who was arrested simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, he's been locked away for 9 years without anyone knowing where he was. Emmanuel, now leading the Justice Review Task Force, travels to every prison in the country. He walks through the same corridors where he once felt hopeless, but now he brings hope to others. I believe you, he tells prisoner after prisoner, using the same words that President Traoré once said to him. And I will help you. Over the following months, they free 27 prisoners who had no clear evidence against them. Some had no case files at all. Others had already completed their sentences but were never released due to paperwork errors. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. Remember Emmanuel's former boss, the man who falsely accused him? His name was Laurent Gear, and he hadn't stopped destroying lives. Emmanuel discovers that Gear is still falsely accusing employees, still using the justice system as his personal weapon. When President Traoré sees the evidence, falsified documents, forged witness reports, a long history of complaints from former employees who had been wrongfully imprisoned, he doesn't hesitate. "We are now going after those who use the justice system for personal gain," he announces. The days of bribery and fake accusations are over. Laurent Gear is arrested. The corrupt judge who sentenced Emmanuel confesses to taking bribes. The entire web of corruption that destroyed Emmanuel's life is finally exposed. During the trial, Emmanuel sits in the front row beside President Traoré. The judge who ruined his life turns to him and says, "I ruined your life. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only ask that you never let this happen again." Emmanuel rises slowly, his voice calm and strong. "You took 7 years from me, but you taught me something. Justice must be protected not by the powerful, but by the brave." The courtroom erupts in applause. Laurent Gear is sentenced to 18 years in prison. The corrupt judge is dismissed. And Emmanuel? He's declared a man of honor by the National Assembly. 1 year later, at the first anniversary of Operation Justice Light, thousands gather in the Capitol Stadium. Hundreds of former prisoners who have been freed and supported back into society stand together, each wearing a white sash with the words, "Justice Restored." Emmanuel gives the closing speech. He stands silently for a moment, looking out at the sea of faces, then speaks from his heart. "I once thought my life was over. I once thought silence was my only companion. But today I stand here not as a victim, but as a partner in rebuilding justice. I forgive those who hurt me. I thank the one who listened. And I challenge every one of you, listen to the unheard. Stand for the unseen. Speak for the voiceless. Because justice is not a luxury. It is a right. And together, we must protect it." The stadium erupts in cheers. Tears flow freely. That night, people across Burkina Faso light candles in their homes, celebrating Justice Day for the first time in their nation's history. Today, Emmanuel serves as special advisor on national justice and human rights, working directly with the president. He's traveled to remote villages, sometimes on foot or motorcycle, listening to stories under mango trees and in dusty classrooms. He's met grandmothers still waiting for sons to return, wives who never knew where their husbands had been taken, and orphans punished for crimes they never committed. His message is always the same: let me be your voice. Tell me everything. The cell where Emmanuel spent 7 years of his life now has a plaque on the wall. This cell once held a man the world forgot, but it also held the spark that set justice free. This story isn't just about one president or one prisoner. It's about what happens when someone in power chooses to listen instead of ignore, to act instead of just talk, to care instead of just campaign. It's about the power of believing someone when the whole world has given up on them. It's about second chances and the courage to admit when systems are broken. It's about turning pain into purpose and using your voice to lift up others who have been silenced. President Traoré could have stayed in his comfortable palace, surrounded by advisors telling him what he wanted to hear. Emmanuel could have given up hope and accepted that his life was over. But neither of them did. One chose to listen. One chose to speak. And together, they proved that real change is possible when we refuse to accept injustice as normal. The next time you hear about corruption, about broken systems, about people who've been forgotten by society, remember this story. Remember that it only takes one person willing to stand up, one voice willing to speak out, one heart willing to care. Maybe you can't change an entire nation's justice system. But you can listen to someone who needs to be heard. You can speak up for someone who's been silenced. You can choose to care when it would be easier to look away. Because at the end of the day, that's what this story is really about. It's about the power we all have to make a difference, one person at a time, one story at a time, one act of courage at a time. The chains have been broken. The truth has come out. And it all started with a president who chose to visit a prison and really listen to what he heard there. What will you choose to do with the power you have in your own life? What voices will you choose to amplify? What injustices will you refuse to ignore? The answers to those questions might just change everything. If this story moved you, if it inspired you, if it made you believe that change is possible, then hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories that prove humanity is worth believing in. And remember, your voice matters. Your actions matter. You matter. The world needs more people willing to listen, willing to care, willing to act. Will you be one of them?